And I'm going to flip the canvas back around and using a new layer and using the lonely shade of green. So I added this color kind of late into the palette, but I put it in the wrong place, but I thought it was kind of funny, so I left it there. Hello friend, welcome back to my channel. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. It's Tim here, and in this video, I wanted to teach you my method on how to paint super easy digital pine trees on Procreate. I love landscape painting, and I really wanted to share how to make the process so much easier for you. So the brush we're going to be using in this video, I think it's really going to surprise you. We're actually only going to be using the water pen from the calligraphy section, which is an absolute hidden gem for painting on Procreate. And here are the hex codes that you'll need for all of the colors that I'm using. That way you can paint along. So when you're ready, let's begin. We're going to start with the very easiest tree first, and I think you're really going to surprise yourself with how simple it is. Using the water pen and a small size brush, I'm going to paint a straight vertical line in the center of our painting. And we're using the first color in the first row, which is the darkest shade of green. Then I'm going to begin painting the branches by creating small little clusters of short, curved paint strokes that will progressively get longer, and the clumps will get bigger and more dense the further down you get. We are basically creating a right triangle between the top of the tree and the ground. And we're going to continue repeating the same branch painting pattern down the tree, progressively getting wider and wider clumps of branches. And at the very ends of each new row, you're going to want to kind of flick them out just a little bit more so than the rest of the branches. That way they're all kind of varying in different directions and they're all just a little bit different. And as we get to the bottom here, I'm just focusing in on filling it in and rounding out the bottom of the tree a little bit more. Next, we're going to go into settings and canvas, and we're going to flip the canvas horizontally. And now we're going to repeat the same pattern on the other side now. I always find it easier to paint from right to left and focusing in on one side as we go rather than trying to tackle the whole thing at once. It'll definitely help you keep the shape better controlled and easier to adjust this way. So we're just going to kind of fill it in and match it up with the right hand side just a little bit more. We're not making both sides completely symmetrical, just making sure that the shapes are similar. So once you have the rest of your tree created, I will meet you back here. So next, I really wanted to show you how easily you can adjust your branches in case the shape gets wild. So we're going to go into liquefy and push, and we're going to kind of lightly move any branches that might be too wide or kind of wonky and kind of push them back into shape. Then I'm going to flip the canvas back around and using a new layer and using the lonely shade of green. So I added this color kind of late into the palette, but I put it in the wrong place, but I thought it was kind of funny, so I left it there. But we're going to use this color and start laying down color over top of the entirety of the tree with that same 6% brush size or so. We are allowing a little bit of the darker color from our base to still show through, but this will create a little bit of dimension in our tree, and we're kind of using the same kind of cluster method as before, but now we're putting it over top of the entire tree now. Once you get that all filled in, I'm going to add some small little details here and there, so I'm going to make the top of our tree just a little bit longer, and we're going to add some branches to it, and then I'm going to fill in the bottom right-hand corner just a little bit more to fluff it out. Next, using the fifth color in the first row, the lightest shade of brown, I'm going to paint 3 semi-curved, semi-straight lines in the center of our tree to give us a tree trunk. So finally, we're going to add a new layer, and then using the second color in the first row, using a small size brush again, we're going to use the same method of laying branches and color over the top, only we're going to do a little bit less than before. These are only highlight branches, so you don't want to overwhelm the tree with this color. We're just going to kind of pick out some of the details over the top, and then you're going to repeat the same pattern down to the bottom of the tree, which then completes the first and easiest of our pine trees. I use this method in almost every one of my tutorials, and this brush has been a game changer to make beautiful trees more quickly, so I hope you've enjoyed painting along so far. So the next tree is where things are going to get a little bit more spicy and will add to what we just created. So we're going to use the same method as before, and only paint one side of the tree at a time, and then flip it and then paint the other. And then I'm going to add some wild paint strokes to kind of fluff out our edges and make them a little more wild. Then in a new layer of green, using the second shade of green in the first row, we're going to put a layer of highlight color over top of our tree like before. Still allowing some of the background still to show through, that way we get a nice contrast with our tree. I'm going to add just a little bit to the top to make it a little bit more pointy, and then using the 5th color in the first row and adding a new layer, we're going to use that lighter shade of brown and we're going to create our tree trunk. Then I'm going to take all 3 layers of tree and merge them down into one. Then I'm going to make a copy of it so there are 2 now, so they look thicker. Then I'm going to add a new layer on top of these 2 layers, and using the 3rd green in the first row, the lightest shade of green, we're going to start putting our detail highlight branches on top of our tree. We're going to make these highlight branches kind of wild too. We're just going to make sure that the lighter color doesn't overwhelm the rest of the tree. Then going to merge all of our tree layers into one. Then I'm going to make a copy of this tree layer and we're going to resize it and make it larger. We're going to put it over top of our original tree, and it doesn't really matter whether you hide the original tree or not. It's really not going to be seen, so that's up to you. So this is where our tree is going to become really different from the other one. So now we're going to switch over to the blending tool, and you're going to want to make sure that the blending tool is also with the water pen, and we're going to start adding some details to our tree. I would also use the same size to blend with that you painted with. So if you're using like a size 6 like I was, you'd also want to blend with a size 6. And we're just going to use a really light-handed singular or double paint stroke, and you'll want to avoid any sort of like hard cross-hatching or scrubbing motions or pressing too hard, because that will smear the colors rather than to blend them. It'll be easier if you use a medium pressure to like press down with, and then end with a really light pressure and kind of a flicking motion. That'll create a really great branch and a really great blend. Now I'm going to take the 4th color in the first row, the darker shade of brown, and outline the tree trunk again just to bring it out just a little bit more since it got covered a bit. We're still allowing the tree branches to cross over the original trunk. You don't want to get rid of all of them. It just makes it look a little bit more dimensional that way. You can also take the lighter color and fill it in a little bit more too, whichever one you want. It's completely up to you. I'm going to add just a little bit more green right there where I lost it a little bit, so if that happens to you, feel free to change it. And then I'm going to continue taking the water pen with the blur tool and creating little flicks and detail strokes to add more little areas of interest to the tree and softening up all of the edges. The key to blending in this section is still allowing some of the darkness to still show through. That way it kind of creates a 3D-esque effect, and also not making the tree look overly symmetrical, so different branches on different sides and different places is definitely what you want. And when you're happy with your blending, I'll meet you back for the final step. The last thing I'm going to do is, if you have any branches that need adjusted, feel free to do so with the liquify tool and the push feature. It is a wonderful tool. I'm just going to move the shape of mine in here just a little bit here and there. I'm also going to take a quick copy canvas and up the saturation just a little bit more too, just to brighten it up a little bit, but we're done. This will give you 2 very different looking trees to play around with, so you'll have to let me know below which one you want to try out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll be able to go out into the world and make lots of happy little trees. I hope this will be a helpful digital painting resource for you. If you create some happy little trees, I would absolutely love to see them, and if you're on Instagram, please tag me at Timstar Studio. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, I invite you to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps my channel out. And until next time, happy painting, friend.